to Rules of the Game podcast. My name is Butch Porter. I'm your host. We're here again in the library of Dodona Manor, the home of George C. Marshall in beautiful downtown Leesburg. And with me today is General Bugs Forsythe. Now, it's Hugh Forsythe, but nobody calls you by your first name anymore.
That's
right?
correct.
Does anybody call you by your first name?
Yeah, people that know me from home, where I grew up. It's a military nickname, so, people that knew me before military still Hugh. Yeah.
Sure.
And I just don't call me late for dinner. You can call me anything.
Well, they don't do call signs in other branches to
Oh, yeah.
quite the same degree. Though,
Navy
right?
more so, even in Marines.
Navy more so?
Army not quite so much, but Navy
I've
and
heard of call
Marines
signs in the Army.
not too much. Not too
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
But so where are you from?
I grew up in Kansas on a large farm in Kansas.
A large farm? Did you grow up farming? Was
Yep.
That was your
Oh yeah.
your day, like through your childhood?
Yep. Up until and then when I graduated from high school, I went straight to the academy a month later. So yeah. So 18 years there and right out to the academy.
So you were at the Air Force
Air
Academy?
Force Academy, yes.
All right. So what brought you here?
Flew with United my last couple of years, and then I thought, I actually moved here because I didn't really chase. I was in the reserves at the time,
Okay.
and I assumed I'd probably get a job at the Pentagon. And I think the whole time I was in the reserves here, I never served one day. I'm one of the few general officers that never served in the Pentagon. And
You never served in the Pentagon?
Never served in the Pentagon. Glad of that.
Are you really?
Very much so.
Why is that?
I know how to put warheads on foreheads. My job is to serve on the front line.
Right. So is the Pentagon a little too political for
Not a little.
your tastes? Right. No, I'm being facetious. I mean, I'm being
No,
euphemistic, if you will.
There's good
yeah.
people there, don't get me wrong. And they do a good job. But
it is a different.
It's just a different.
Yeah.
You're doing staff work and things like that, and you're not putting warheads on foreheads.
That's right. Can you tell us a little bit about your path to general, like how that went down? Did you intend to be a career officer?
Not at all. I
Okay.
mean, if I had a nickel, not a dollar, but a nickel for every time somebody said you made general, I'd be a very rich man.
Made general?
You made general.
Right.
Yeah. And so you make it.
Sure.
All I want to do is fly fighters. That's all I want to do.
Okay.
And that's what I did. And so.
And you did that for?
Almost almost 25 years.
Wow.
And actually, when I was flying F-16s at the time, and it was kind of funny. The day I found out I made colonel is the same day they announced that we're going from F-16s to tankers, K-135. So I think I don't want to. Not that I didn't want to fly the airplane. I didn't want to fly the airplane, and I'd already flying in the airlines, some large airplanes. So I said I'm going to retire. So I retired, and nobody retires, and then makes general. And anyway,
Right.
I about 6 months later, a friend of mine called me up and said, "Hey, we got a job here. We'd like for you to come out." Long story short, I met a guy. He says, "I think you should be a general." I just laughed at him. He goes, "I'll make some phone calls."
And you had just made colonel, right?
I'd made colonel.
Right.
I'd been colonel a couple of years. And anyway, I had to laugh at it because I said, "You don't know my background." He goes, "Well, I know this person." And so I'm truly a great example. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Sure.
And
Sure.
perfect example, this friend of mine, still a very good friend of mine, was my mentor. And he said, "Here's what we're going to do. This is going to happen." I said, "You don't understand. I don't have any of the preliminaries done." He said, "We'll get them. It's called PME, Professional Military Education."
Sure.
I never done any of that. He goes, "How did you make colonel without any of that?" And I said, "I don't know.
I don't know.
I just did." And anyway, so I had to go out and get all my PME done. And then I ended up making my stars. In my defense, I think I was very blessed. I had 3 different assignments as a flag officer.
Sure.
And that's a general officer. And I think I did a very good job on all 3.
Sure.
I'll compliment
So
that.
colonels don't fly planes, right? That's
Normally
like
colonels
majors?
do.
Majors do.
Colonels do. Usually
Not-
generals do not.
Well, no, I can't imagine a general. I'm
Yeah.
trying to
Colonels,
picture a colonel.
depends on your position. If you're a wing commander, yes, you're
still flying,
You're supposed
right?
to still be qualified in the airplane. Yeah.
Well, qualify, but you're not flying as often.
Not as often, no. Then you're exactly right. With the high-performance airplanes, like myself, a lot of people said, you should maintain currency. I had enough everything, and I knew then that I wasn't going to be current, and I didn't want to be. I knew what it was like to be
It's
the
a young
junior.
man's game. In
Well,
a
it's a young
sense,
man.
right?
You sit there and you got these old guys coming in to fly, and they're a burden on you. So I didn't. So what I did, I flew in the back seat. They had every squadron has in the F-16. F-16 is a single-seat fighter, but all squadrons have a 2-place airplane.
Okay.
So all I did was just jump in the back seat and we'd fly with the instructor up front. I got to know the instructor very well. He's still a very good friend of mine.
Sure.
And he would brief the ride, and then as soon as we taxied out. I took the airplane and I flew the whole airplane. He never said anything. I led the whole mission. He didn't say anything. We come back. I didn't have to debrief. It was perfect. I'd fly whenever I wanted. I'd ask for him. I'd go out and fly. I didn't have to put all up with all the you know what.
So you went quickly to general there, like your story. So from 1 to 2-star, was that in?
It was real back to this mentor thing.
Okay.
When I came up as a colonel. I didn't. The first board I hadn't. In the reserves, a little bit different. You have to be placed in a 1-star position, and then you meet your 1-star board. In active duty, you have to make your star first, and then you get placed in a 1-star position.
Sure.
So I was in a 1-star position, coming up on my board, and another board came out. I had not been in position long enough to meet that particular board, and this my mentor. I would say his name, but I better not. He said. Did you see the results of this board last came out? I said, yeah, I'm really surprised so-and-so made it. He goes, don't you know what's going on? And I said, well, yeah, I think so. He was stepping in my office. So he was a 2-star. He goes, okay, you will meet the next board and you will make a 1-star. And I said, sir, I won't make it because it's my first board and no one ever makes 1-star in their first board.
Okay.
And I'm coming up on 30 years service date and that'll be the only time I meet the board and I have to retire. So I won't make general. He goes, shut up. He said a little bit stronger than that. I won't say what he said.
He said something.
Yeah, he said a little bit stronger than that. That's all I'll say. He goes,
sure.
You will meet the next board. You will make 1-star on that board. And as soon as you make it, I'm putting you in a 2-star position.
Right.
Sure enough, 3 months later, the board meets. Bam, comes out. That very day, it gets announced. So I got put in a 2-star position. I hadn't even pinned my first star on yet. Sure. So like I said, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
So we have, since we're in General Marshall's library, you know, we talk a lot here, you know, at the Dodona Manor about, you know, him as a model of leadership, as someone we should emulate. Who do you count as your sort of role models from a leadership standpoint coming up through?
George Marshall being one.
Is a big one, right?
Big one. Eisenhower, obviously. And then as you go along, as a very junior member, you don't know the very high-ranking guys. Like
Sure.
I used to say, you know, like when I was in Vietnam, I'm like, who are those idiots making those decisions?
Right.
You know, well, now roll the clock 25, 30 years forward. I knew who it was. It was me. I ran the northern invasion for Iraq for Operation Enduring Freedom in 2003. I was in charge of all flight operations. And so in answer to your question, you kind of looked at some of the very senior people, you didn't know them. So your mentors there were probably either senior captains or people that you've worked with, and usually lieutenant colonels, maybe a colonel here or there, but very few general officers. Then once you got to senior rank, most of the people earn their rank, and very few people get through that really shouldn't be there. Every once in a while, but all in all, not so much.
Sometimes it is who you know, but
no, most people have.
Well, example, you're the right people, but you were qualified.
One class you go to when you make your first star, it's called Capstone. It's a 6-month course, and it's to learn about what you need to know as a general officer. And it's held down in D.C. at the National Warfare Center at National Defense University. And typically there's about 50 people in the class, all different services, Navy, Marine, all, and everything. And in that, about 50, it's funny, you look around and you'll see about a third of the class, like these people are really sharp. You know, they deserve to be 3 and 4 stars. You know they're going to make it. They're very good. Bulldog, Matthias, Mad Dog.
Like Mad Dog,
Bulldog.
okay, yeah.
Mad Dog was in my capstone class. He pinned on the star the same time I did.
Okay.
And you could tell he was going to go places. And then you had about a third of the class, you're like, they've done something, they've kissed somebody's you know what to make a star they shouldn't be here. And then you had a third of the class
But they don't get to 3 and 4.
No,
right?
but and they have about a third of the class that weren't sure why they were there, and they were out for a good time. And I'm not going to tell you which third of the class I was in, but I had a good time when I was there.
We shouldn't
Anyway,
speculate.
So, but that capstone, you learn then that there's some people there you can pick out that say these people are going to be 3, and you can just see.
Yeah. Did you feel like when you became a general in your 2-star position? I mean, I think you kind of alluded to it. I mean, it's one thing to imagine being a general or imagine what generals do.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's another to be a general and actually do general things.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Well, it's different. For one,
Sure.
Yeah, you realize the things you say are perceived, and of course now with the news, I mean the Instagram and the Twitters, and everything like that. It goes out instantly. So you have to be very careful what you say. And it seems like I retired yesterday, but I retired 15 years ago.
Okay.
And that's basically a whole career of somebody. So people ask me, hey, do you know so-and-so? I'm like,
And from
well,
a media standpoint, it's
oh
a
yeah,
generation.
it's a century.
Yeah.
It's a long time. So to answer your question, you have to be very careful what you say.
Sure.
And then the other thing is I found out if I'm speaking to a group of 3 or 400 people, I'm the only speaker out there. They all know who I am. And later I would meet somebody. They go, oh, I know you. You talked, and I don't have a clue who they are because I never did really meet them.
Right.
I give since you ask, I guess this is kind of my different speeches. We learned at Capstone, one of the techniques to give a speech is to have an acronym and to fill in the acronym.
I think I've heard
And so
this.
one time I was down at National War College. I was a senior advisor there after I'd retired, giving briefs. And it was kind of funny, the guy sitting there, I'd gone and talked to class, and the graduating class, I was the last person to talk to before they graduated, so they could have cared less what I was going to say. They were getting ready to get out of town. But anyway, we're sitting there having lunch, and their graduation ceremony is right after lunch. And so my sponsor, he says, General Forsythe, he said, would you ever thought about being a speaker for graduation?
Sure.
I said, sure, I'd love to do it. He goes, what are you doing at 1 o'clock? It was now 12:15. And I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
well, thank
You
you
had
very
45
much.
minutes to
I had
prepare your
45
speech?
minutes. So I put together very quickly, you learn an acronym, and one I came up with is PIPE. I wanted to keep it simple because I knew there were Marines in the unit, so I wanted to keep it as simple as I could. And I figured PIPE was as simple as it could get.
That's just cruel.
And,
my dad was a Marine. I'm just saying.
Well, that's all
it'd
right.
Be nice.
And so PIPE stood for make sure you prepare what you need,
Okay.
make sure you know what's important, prioritize, and the most important is enjoy life. And I've talked to basically wild people about PIPE. I've talked to church groups on PIPE, and I'm able to fill that in with those 3 things. So always prepare, i.e. if you need to get a class, get the class. If you have to get trained. Know what's important. And what I always say about that, what you think's important and who's important may not be the person you think it is. It may be somebody out of clear blue that's very important to you. You don't even realize it till afterwards. And then prioritize. And like I say, it's difficult to prioritize if your mission is to drain the swamp, but you've got an alligator on your ass. It's hard to drain the swamp, to keep that in mind.
That's
and
true.
then the other thing is enjoy life.
Enjoy
your family. Take time for all that. So I've done PIPE. I can make it a 5-minute speech. I can make it a 45-minute speech, and I can do it. So that's one thing when you're talking about what's different than general officers. You got to be able to think on your feet.
Sure.
A little bit. I don't try to wear my rank. I guess if I can make rank, anybody can. So some people definitely wear it and they think they are somebody. I hope I don't come across that way.
Sure. I met you I think the only way I met you, if I'm not mistaken, is that you served on the town council here
correct.
in Leesburg
Right.
for, was it a
Year.
year? Roughly
about a year and a half.
Yeah, a little over a year. So did you enjoy that?
Enjoy is
It's
not the right
different
word.
to being a
Enjoy is
general.
not the right word. Small town politics can get to you very easily.
Sure.
I learned an awful lot. I learned a great deal. And I respect the people on the council, the mayor, the jobs they have, the county board. I respect them. I don't agree with all the things they do sometimes, but it's hard to pass judgment because it's just like, again, back to the general officer
Sure, it's
thing,
tough
being
when
in
you're there.
charge.
Yeah.
You've got to make a decision sometimes. In my particular case, in the military, people's lives depended on it. And
Sure.
I take that very, very serious.
Yeah, it is. I kind of bristle sometimes about when people say, well, all those politicians are bad people, or they're horrible, or they're corrupt, or whatever. And I'm like, well, I know like a dozen or 2 dozen
No, that's
politicians.
not true.
It's they're all human beings. And
right.
some
And
of
it's
them,
difficult. Some people do have an agenda
Yeah.
and out there, but being on a council and trying to do the best thing, because everybody, I mean, I had emails given to me, called me stupid and no leadership skills and everything else. So people do bad, especially in this news media age. It's very discouraging for that.
It is. Now we're filming this the day after Election Day. Luckily, we don't know who our president is going to be yet, and so we don't have to talk about that, which is fun. But what is coming up next week, next Wednesday, a week from today, is Veterans Day, which is why so this will come out roughly on Veterans Day. What does Veterans Day mean to you?
Well, it's kind of changed, I think, to me, Butch, a lot. I graduated from high school in the mid-'60s, went to Vietnam after I graduated from the academy. And at the time when I graduated from high school in '65, as a young male, you had two choices. You either went to college or you got drafted and went to the military. Soon after, I don't remember when the draft was, I think it was in mid-60s or something like that, but or the late 60s. But that's changed. Nowadays, very few people even consider the military as an option. And so to answer your question, what is Veterans Day? I hope people don't forget what it's like to be a veteran, but I think a lot of people are. I think the opportunities are tremendous. I talk to young people, and yes, you may go to harm's way, that's true, but to serve your country and some of the things you learn, you'll never get that in the civilian world.
Can I tell you a little about my perspective? I'm younger, just a little, it's a couple 3 years, and my experience, and I think a lot of people experience this, and what I want to ask you about is how it's changed since you got your generalship, made general, right? My first experience was Persian Gulf, right? So I graduated in '92, and so a lot of my friends went to fight in the Persian Gulf, which lasted, like 15 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't, it was really, it was overwhelming force. It was,
that's right.
There was no occupation and,
Right.
All that sort of stuff. Since then, it's all been way worse, but that was the beginning. And I think my take is, and I want to get your thoughts on it. I think when you were coming up and all the way up to the time and past the time where you made general, I think most people knew at least a few people who served in the military.
Oh yes, very
right?
much so.
I mean, everybody had, especially if you go back far enough, World War II, I mean, everybody
Yeah.
had a friend, lost a friend or two,
Yeah.
or had several friends who lost limbs or whatever, or came back, Vietnam. So I think what's happened today is that there are veteran families and there are military families, and they have that experience. But then there's a whole rest, like there's a division. Like I think half the country has no idea almost.
I'd
And
say
a lot
more
of
than
it,
half. I'd say 70% or 80%.
I don't know. I mean, the implications of that are profound to me.
I may be overstating, but I think a lot of people think, well, if they don't do anything else, they can go to, if they can't afford college or they're not smart, if they can't succeed and get a job, they can always just go to the military. They'll, the military take anybody.
Sure.
And
that's a bad
thing
way
to
of
say.
looking at it, yeah.
Because to excel in the military, you need to be sharp. I mean, some of the sharpest people I worked with are the people I knew in the military.
Sure.
Yeah, and they could hold their own in any job, any place, anywhere.
It's one of those, to me, it's one of those remaining institutions. Like, I've talked a lot about, over the years about this, and there's a book written about it, Time to Build, about institutions and how people can treat them differently. Like, whether it be family or church or your community, your school, whatever it is, you can treat it two different ways. You can treat it as a performative sort of thing where you get into that community because you want to show how great you are and you want to get awards and you want to get credit and you want to be glorified. And then you have another way of looking at all those communities, and that is that you approach it from a spirit of service and from a spirit of formation. In other words, you do it because you want to improve yourself, you want to be part of it, and you want to be better, be a better person. And I think the military is one of those few institutions left that is extremely, I mean, there are people, as you noted earlier, who are in there to glorify themselves, but it is a very formative institution still, right?
The thing I think that most people, and like somebody said today, again, I retired 15 years ago. I'm not sure I could serve in the present day military where everybody kumbaya. I mean, I got chewed out, called stupid, especially as a fighter pilot. You get, there's no holds barred. You maintain a certain standard or you wash out.
So you think even the military is compromised in that sense?
Oh, huge.
It's very performative, if you will.
Huge. But the thing I think
Sad
I learned
to
from the
hear.
military, more so than, well, I tell young people, there's two things that you learn in the military. One is don't ever let anybody tell you you can't do something.
Sure. And
I was told that, you can't do that. And I said, oh, yes, I can. And I did it.
Right.
That was one, is you can do anything you want. Back to my pipe speech, know what's important. You got to prepare. But the other one is you learn teamwork. And I think that is what's really missing now in America. You learn, gone through basic training, and you've gone through other training to rely on other people to help. And you learn to work as a team. And I think that's really missing right now in America.
Well, how does it translate, not just how we look at it individually, but how does it translate, how do you see the effects of 3/4 of the American population not really having any understanding of where the military, what the military experience is?
It's going to affect it. We see it even in the president election right here, right now, with things coming on. I don't know the exact number, but something like only 3 or 4% of the people have ever served of the, I don't know what age, the 50 of age people, whatever millennials, whoever they call that group. Now, and my goodness, like you said, it used to be right at 100%, and it slowly dwindled. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the military is not all out trying to fight. It's to protect what we have here in the United States. And I don't think a lot of people understand there are some countries out there willing to come in and take what we have.
Sure.
And not just ask about it. And if we say kumbaya to them, that doesn't work. So we need the military.
Is that?
I don't know.
Something like
I
that?
think that's probably some foreign
hold
term.
hands
Everybody
and
else can kiss and
yeah.
all that thing.
So do you think a part of it is the fact that that we don't have state-based wars anymore? It's the war on terrorism, and I mean we do, but war on terrorism is sort of, it's an asymmetrical, non-state actors. Do you think that's part of why we don't look at it the same way?
I think part of it is back to what you said, Butch, earlier, is we were brought up. You were where your parents were in the military. Like my dad was a World War II vet,
Marine,
and everything. So you were brought in with certain standards that did have military influence. Some good, some bad. I'll be right up front. There's some good and bad on that. Sure. So I'm not saying it was all great, positive. And we miss some of that right now. And like I said, and then like thing that I don't know exactly what's all being taught in some of the high school, but I don't think we're teaching history. A lot of people don't understand.
Now you're preaching to the choir now.
Well, I know that. But it's true. But a lot of people don't understand what Hitler was about. A lot of people say that the Holocaust did not occur.
Right.
I know people that think 9/11 did not occur. So that is what I think we need the military to stand by for.
Yeah. So can I ask you, what do you think the and you can answer it any way you feel led to, but what do you feel is our next big challenge from a world security standpoint? We're in that business,
dominance,
right?
power. I'd say China.
Yeah.
I'd say China, because not only they're a large country, they're very, when I say well off, that's not a good term.
They have resources.
It's a good thing. Resource. What I'm looking for. They have resources needed, let alone the people. The old joke was, back in the old days when I was going to school, that they didn't have, they had nuclear weapons. They had no means of delivering it. The old joke was they could take the people, line them up, just down, and just pass it down, because they got several billion people. They could just hand. That was the old joke. Remember that joke?
Yes, vaguely. I do remember that scene in the Olympics. When we were in Shanghai, or Beijing, Beijing Olympics, 2000, I can't remember.
Yeah.
2004 maybe, where one of the, Olympics organizers asked one of the Chinese officials in charge of it, say, this is just amazing. The opening ceremony was just
huge.
Wow, right? And he's like, it's just amazing how many people you got involved to do this. And he goes, we got lots of people.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
We have no shortage of people.
That's true there, and
they also have, to be fair, they also have goals, and they're actually fairly public about those goals.
Exactly.
It's not so. At some point, you have to believe them if they tell you what their goals are, and
I think that is a challenge. I'm not saying necessarily they're a threat.
Right.
To your question is what I see as the next potential. I'd go there. The thing is,
we just got booted from China's podcast listeners, so they won't listen to any of this anymore.
No, and then the other thing is too, Butch, is the Mideast is always going to be. I mean, you can read the Bible, and it's there. I worked in India for a few years. I flew for Air India after I retired from United, and I didn't realize how much India hates Pakistan. And when you ask them, it's just because.
It's
just because, and they have
We've
no
always
reason.
been at war with Eurasia, right? Yeah,
so it's just
propaganda.
And people don't understand those kind of issues. So there's still conflicts out there, and we need to be careful, signing alliances and everything else, because it's hard to. Turkey's a good example. Don't get me started on Turkey.
That's not exactly kumbaya either,
no,
right?
No,
not by any stretch.
No.
So we do have this Veterans Day thing. I want to make sure we talk about that before we wrap up, and we do have one assignment that I'm sure you were given ahead of time. But the Veterans Day commemoration, it's Admiral Thomas Lynch.
Correct.
Right? That's going to be the keynote speaker.
Right.
And that's on Veterans Day in
Next
the morning?
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Yep.
That's right.
A week from today, 11th, 10:30.
Yep.
So come out here. I know the person in charge of parking. He's a great person.
Really?
So, yeah.
Is it you?
Me.
Yeah. I had a feeling. It might be you. Well, I hope we were able to come. We live within half a mile of this very spot, so I'm hoping we're able to come. So what we try to do on the podcast is make sure you've given us a lot already, but we want to make sure all of our guests come up with one rule for us, because the name of the podcast is Rules of the Game, and so everybody gets to establish a rule. And I'll give you some examples. Phyllis Randall was here a couple weeks ago, and hers was never compare people to Nazis, because it's just not a useful exercise from a like rhetoric standpoint, like calling everybody Nazis, which is fun. We had one about be authentic. Another one is from last week was was it? Become a great listener. Is a very important one. So if you had to pick one, because your pipe has 4, so you got to narrow down, and you can expound on it however or you can pick another one. It could be a rule for life. It could be a rule for military service. It could be a rule for conversations, because that's what this is all about. If you had to pick a rule, what would it be?
As I said before, don't let anybody ever tell you can't do something.
That's a good one. I like it.
If you can do it, I mean, if you may have changed. You may not go from point A to point B direct. It may take you a couple of years. You may have to divert.
That's right.
But if you've got your goals there, don't ever give up. If you think it's important to you, and it may change your goal, but don't ever let anybody tell you can't do something.
Never give up. You've seen that illustration with the stork and the frog.
Yeah. He's choking, right? Yeah.
I was talking about that with another guest not too long ago. That's a good one. I had a T-shirt with that on it a while back. So I really appreciate you coming, man. Anything else you want to share that you think
Nope.
that we all
come
need
out
to
the Veterans
about?
Day ceremonies. I don't know Admiral Lynch personally. I've read about him, and so I think he'll give a great talk. But the veterans and the military personnel know how to talk to your everyday person. Come out, you'll learn something from it. Yeah.
One other thing I almost forgot. Sorry. Can you tell me your call sign story? Because I heard it before the podcast and I want to get it.
Oh, well, we caught earlier. My nickname's Bugs, like Bugs Bunny.
Right.
And
it has nothing to do with Bugs Bunny, though.
It has nothing to do, although when I ask it, because people think I say Buzz, and I go, it's Bugs, like Bugs Bunny. So the
you
people
do talk fast.
I know. I talk very fast.
That's
I know
right.
that. You're not the first person to say that.
Is that from your
me.
military service, or were you
me.
born that way?
That's just me. But I picked it up. Typically, as I was telling Butch earlier, the call signs are normally given, especially in the Navy and the Marines, something you've done to highlight yourself.
Sure.
You've done something to highlight yourself, or it could be your name alluding to something else. In my particular case, I went to Air Force Academy and I was playing lacrosse. Never had played that before, and I loving it, and I was doing good at it. I thought it was the greatest game I'd ever seen because I had a stick and I could hit people. And first game,
that's not what the stick is for, right?
I was told that several times, but I still was doing it.
I bet you were.
Yeah, and I was fast for a big guy, so I did very well in lacrosse. Anyway, at the first game we played at halftime, someone said, "Hey, what's your nickname going to be?" I said, "I'm going to be Killer." Or
Killer. Seriously.
Yeah. I mean, I was feared out there in the lacrosse
That's right.
team.
I believe it.
And this guy,
an entire lacrosse team could come through the door, and I wouldn't have any idea.
And anyway, a guy says, "No, that's not good." He says, "You're look like a guy I know named Bugs from Philadelphia." I thought, well, that's stupid. Well, as soon as you say that, the name sticks. Everybody in the lacrosse team, and then everybody in my unit, it just kept growing. So that's how it. But I didn't do anything infamous to earn it. It just stuck. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bugs. Thank you, General, for gracing us with your presence today. It's been a real honor, and I look forward to seeing you next week at the commemoration here at Dodona Manor. And for those of you who are watching or listening, please go have a great conversation, but play by the rules.